Okay, so electrics. Now this was obviously an ambulance beforehand, so a lot of the electrics were already done. However, because I think a mix of it being built by Renault, a French company, and then used and edited by the NHS for 10 years, it was a very complicated setup with the electrics. On the one hand, it was very good because we had things like extractor fans already plugged in, lights as well, such as these. But it was bad because they used every different colour under the sun. There was no black to black, red to red. It was pretty difficult to figure out what was going on already. So I'll try and keep it as simple as possible in explaining it. So you start with your alternator and your starter battery for your car, which every car has. That will charge your leisure battery, which is the battery which will run your whole electric system in the van. And that's only 12 volts, so you won't electrocute yourself. It's fairly safe to deal with. You need a little thing called a split charge kit in between those two, and or a voltage sense relay. Those are the sort of two names for it. What that does, it means when your leisure battery is fully charged, it doesn't try and then charge your alternator and your starter battery. It means that all of the power is only going in one direction. So here's the battery, the leisure battery. It was already here. It's, as I said, 12 volt, and it's got 90 amp hours in there, which means if we're using something that's 5 amps, then it will last 18 hours. That's sufficient for everything we'll ever use it for. So from the leisure battery, we then have that going to a fuse board, and from that fuse board we have all of our appliances. That's things like the water pump, the fridge, the LED lights over here. Ta-da! This USB chargers, we have 4 slots, and then a voltage meter as well, which tells us how much power we have. So that's fairly simple. It just goes straight from the battery to the fuse box, and then if anything trips, that'll shut off, and then you just replace the fuse. It's all very easy. The complicated bit is the external hookup section of it all. So you want to be able to have 240 volt in your van as well, if you choose to, because then it means when you're at a campsite that has electric hookup, you can run your fridge on full power without draining your leisure battery, and more importantly, you've got a battery charger which can then charge your leisure battery as well. So if you're sat in a campsite for a week and you've got electric hookup, you won't need to drive to then charge your leisure battery, because your electric hookup will be charging your leisure battery. So a battery charger costs about 70 or 80 pounds for the sort of budget range. And all we've got, if you think of it very simply, a plug in the side of our van, so that's what we'll plug into an electric hookup on the outside. That then runs through here, through a circuit breaker for extra safety, to these 2 plugs. So when we're in electric hookup, these 2 plugs here are just like any plugs in your house, and they'll be 240 volt. Our fridge is a 2-way fridge, which means we can have it plugged in to the 12 volt system. If you hear that whir, that's now running off of our leisure battery. Or if we're plugged in an electric hookup, we aren't now, so I can't show you, then we just turn on our fridge here, and it'll power up even better and more efficiently. The other thing that's plugged in right now, which is just around the corner here, is our battery charger, and that is linked straight into our battery. So if we're ever on an electric hookup, our battery charger is plugged in to the electric hookup and is then charging our battery. So that's all of the electrics. Very simple. One thing we skipped out on is the hob. You can have obviously like an electric clicker, which will turn it on, but that's 240 volts, so we thought it'd be stupid to have that all hooked up and then only ever use it when we're at an electric hookup site. So we just use a lighter, and this is the simplest thing we installed in the van. It's a hob that we bought for 60 quid. It's meant for a kitchen in a house, but it works just fine. An orange tube goes from the hob into a camping gas bottle, and then we've got a spare camping gas bottle there as well. They cost about 30 quid. I think it'll probably last about 3 months of our trip, which is great. So that's very simple, and we haven't connected it to the electrics. In terms of how much power we get, we're finding that if we drive an hour in a day, then our battery is charged and will work for definitely that night and the next day and maybe the following night as well. If we drive for sort of 2 or 3 hours, then the battery will last 2 days, no problem. Now, what we have discovered meeting other travellers and people in campervans around Europe is that solar is actually very cheap and very efficient. So when we get home, we're going to buy a £300 solar panel, and that will basically keep our battery charged all of the time, even in British weather, and we can have our fridge on all the time, because currently we're only having the fridge on when we drive, which is working. We're still having cold beer every day, but it would be nice to just have, you know, really ice cold fridge all the time. And that is the electrics. It sounds complicated, it sounds dangerous, but really it is quite simple if you can just get your head around it. There's some really good graphs online, and yeah, if I have time I'll put up my drawings as well, just so you can see how the wiring in a van works. Alright, electrics!